passage in Luke 14, verses 25 through 33, begins with Jesus telling a group of fans or followers to rethink what they were doing. If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. That does not seem like a very practical way to create a following. Perhaps he should have said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest in your souls." Actually, he did say that on another occasion. But on this occasion, he talked about hating your family and even your own life and being willing to carry a cross. That was guaranteed to make a whole lot of people want to leave. To be clear, the idea of hating your family does not mean despising them or wishing them harm. The parallel in the Gospel of Luke is useful here when it says, "Whoever loves father and mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." The idea is still radical discipleship, where our allegiance to Jesus is total. But it does not mean that we have to stop loving our family. It just means that our primary allegiance must be to Jesus rather than to our family. And in fact, that is actually the best way to love them. Nevertheless, Jesus then pivots to two parables that teach the idea of being practical. It almost seems non sequitur, but it isn't. On the one hand, we are to be totally devoted to Jesus, but on the other hand, we are to be practical in the way we live and do so. Being practical is about aligning the decisions we make with reality and long-term viability. That is a whole science in itself. If you want to be practical or get real, then you need to do some work before you act. You have to gather all the facts and clarify what you really want to accomplish. You have to look at the context and figure out what resources it will take and what your limitations are. Then you need to evaluate the various options that you have realistically. Consider then what your own values and commitments are and how they may align or not with this plan. Ask yourself how this decision would extend on into the future and not just affect the present. And consider too how others are going to respond and anticipate any resistance you might receive. And then, even when you do all this and decide to act, be ready also to adapt to changing circumstances. Being practical takes some effort, and it isn't easy when your head is in the clouds. Maybe that is why Jesus said what he did. He wanted to be sure that they were ready to get real. Maybe he wanted them to understand that being his disciple meant more than just filling their minds with a lot of theological jargon. It also meant living out their faith in practical ways in the place where they are. The examples that he gave here didn't necessarily involve people who were radical in their faith at all. They were just people who knew how to be practical. The person who wanted to construct a tower, for instance, was wise enough to know that they needed to carefully evaluate their own resources and what resources would be necessary to see this project to completion. If the resources are not available to you, then the project you begin will just end in failure. So rather than build a monument to bad thinking, you should do something else, or at least scale down your plan. In the same way, instead of saying, "Yes, Jesus, I will follow you to the ends of the earth," consider first that maybe he just wants you to go to the end of the block and help a stranger. Trusting him and also doing what is real are not conflicting ideas. After all, it is not about your ability to do great things. It is about your willingness to be faithful in everything you do. It is interesting that Jesus also included a king in his illustration, a man in authority with huge responsibilities for the welfare of others. Apparently, even a king has to get real sometimes. You cannot just wage war whenever you want to, no matter what the provocation is or what you want to accomplish. You must first consider the chances of winning or losing and the cost that others will pay. In this case, Jesus said that the king had 10,000 men. However, his enemy had 20,000 men. Those are not good odds. At the very least, such a war would result in a Pyrrhic victory, or even winning would really be losing. In this case, Jesus advised making peace, not war. You can apply this one to almost any relationship you have. And trust me, you can't win a fight with your spouse, because even if you do, you will lose. What then does all this practicality have to do with following Jesus? Following Jesus is always all or nothing at all. Remember the rich young ruler? Jesus asked him to give all his wealth to the poor, to give up everything, all his status and his luxurious lifestyle, and become his disciple. Surely that would not have been practical. Think of the servants that he'd be putting out of work. Okay, maybe they were probably slaves, but still get real. It's not easy being rich. I think Jesus knew that while the rich young man had plenty of resources at his disposal, he still didn't have what he needed to follow Jesus, because that truly is an all or nothing at all commitment. And then after that, it becomes a call to get real. As somebody once said, Jesus is not interested in emotional fervor that fizzles. He wants disciples who understand that following him is not just a spiritual high. It's a lifelong, costly journey that demands both passion and prudence. True discipleship is neither flashy nor shallow. It's a long, deliberate walk toward the cross, with eyes wide open and heart fully engaged. It is easy, really. You just have to figure out how to be radically faithful without also being recklessly naive. I will let you know when I figure that one out. Others before me, with more wisdom, have said, practicality isn't a retreat from faith, it's a form of it. To count the cost is to honor the seriousness of the call. It is to say, I will not romanticize this path. I will not pretend discipleship is easy. I will prepare, endure, and remain. That is what we are called to do if we want to be his disciple. I like playing around with AI sometimes. So just for fun, I asked it to come up with a new parable along the lines of the ones found here in Luke 14. It came up with a story about someone who felt a deep conviction to build a public shelter. Instead of starting with blueprints, she walked the streets for weeks, listening to stories. She met a man who'd lost his home to a flood, a woman who feared eviction, and a teenager sleeping in a laundromat. Their needs were varied, their wounds deep. Then she sat down and counted the cost. The land she wanted was zoned for luxury condos. The materials she dreamed of were far beyond her budget. And the city council would require permits, inspections, and endless meetings. So she revised her plans. She chose a smaller plot, sourced recycled materials, and partnered with a local church for funding. She gave up her dream of skylights and solar panels, but kept her vision of dignity and safety. Years later, the shelter stood, not as a monument to her ambition, but as a testament to her wisdom. It wasn't perfect, but it was strong. And when the next storm came, it held. As parables go, this was not a bad one. And it has similar real-life examples behind it, like the Care First Village in Los Angeles, California. This project transformed repurposed shipping containers into a large-scale interim housing complex for people experiencing homelessness. That wasn't just a bold architectural move. It was a calculated response to urgent need, zoning constraints, and budget realities. The use of modular containers allowed rapid construction and cost control, which was practical. The design prioritized dignity, privacy, and community offering not just shelter, but wraparound services like counseling and healthcare, which preserve the core values behind the goal. Hilda L. Salas, who spearheaded this project, always said that throughout her long career of public service, her faith has always been her motivation for everything she has done. The moral is this: discipleship, or any deep commitment, is not just about passion. It's about listening, planning, and sacrificing illusions to preserve what matters most. The wise builder doesn't abandon the dream. They reshape it to endure. That should be our goal as well, to combine passion and absolute loyalty to Christ with the ability to be practical. Call it practical Christianity, if you want. This is the faith in Christ put into practice in life. Do this, and you get what Jesus desires of all his disciples: a heart that cares and hands that move to serve others in practical ways that can make a difference. Be safe, and God bless you.